Hey, it's Eric again. Today we're going to be we're going to be focusing on the yeast ingredient in beer. Yeast is it's not really an ingredient for flavor necessarily. It's a single-celled microorganism that its duty in life to us is to eat sugar and turn it into alcohol and carbon dioxide. For the most part, it does its job and then it drops out, and most of the beers that you're going to have are then filtered so the yeast gets pulled out even more extremely. However, some beers, Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, for example, has yeast in it, but you can't really taste it. We'll be doing the Franziskaner Hefe-Weisse tonight. And the Hefe means with yeast, and just to make sure that we get some yeast in it, we're going to take the bottle and roll it around a little bit, kind of gently make sure that the yeast is stuck on the bottom, kind of gets up into solution a little bit there, and then we will this isn't really a yeast glass, but it reminds me of wheat glasses. And fill it up a little bit here. It's actually a Dinkellocker. Typically the wheat glasses are kind of tall. I'm running a little bit low. Notice, if you will, the beer is rather cloudy. That's because I've kicked that yeast back up in suspension there. The yeast binds to some of the particles that are left over in the beer, so tends to grab some of the leftover hop residue and so forth that binds into the yeast. So oftentimes with a wheat beer or beer that's going to have a lot of yeast in it, you're going to kind of reduce the hopping levels a little bit, because you're going to get actual yeast bite, yeast bitterness, and a little bit of a hop bite, just because it's carrying that around in there. But they kind of compensate for that ahead of time for you, which is real convenient. Wheat beer, if you take the yeast out of the equation on the wheat beers, you're going to get kind of bread-like flavors, because we're all very used to eating bread with wheat, and so we're kind of familiar with that. And the sweetness, you throw in the flour and the sweetness, it's almost like cake. But you use this yeast. The wheat yeast, in fact, pull off a lot of fruity sort of overtones as well. So now, number one, notice a nice kind of cloudy beer this go around. The head's still very very rich, because all the proteins and so forth in that wheat beer. It's great. And then the aroma with the wheat yeast, typically fermentation temperature goes up a little bit, so you get a few more mistakes, alcohol, carbon dioxide, and then some esters and phenols and things like that. The esters show up as fruity sort of smells, and bananas and things like that. The phenols are actually kind of smoky, in extreme, almost medicine-y sort of flavors. But typically, like with the Franziskaner, you get some amount of banana sort of aroma, and also some amount of cloviness from the phenols that are kicked up by the yeast. Also, it's going to have some yeast in suspension, so I expect it's going to have, let's see what it has. It's so good. It has yeasty, wonderful, cakey, fruity. It's a lovely, lovely beer. And that's the let's see, Franziskaner Hefe-Weisse right there. There's lots of Hefeweisses out there. In fact, when I lived in Portland, Oregon, and first started homebrewing back in the early 90s, whatever, my transitional beer, my Keystone beer, if you will, because prior to that, I primarily had Keystone, was the Widmer Hefeweizen, which is more of an American style, but still they got the yeast in it. It's just a little bit less heavy with some of the phenols and esters and things that you get from the German breweries. Also, one of my top 5 favorite beers of all time, of course, is the Aventinus by the Schneiderweiss people. But that's more of a wheat Doppelbock. We'd already done a Doppelbock, and really, this beer is going to really pull out the yeast flavors for you. Oh, it's just beautiful. You can't see it here, but when you pour your own glass, you're going to notice just lovely cascades of almost champagne-like bubbles, tiny, tiny, tiny bubbles. Anyway, another sip. So that yeast, it's the yeast bite. So it's a little bit different than the bitterness just from the straight hoppy beer. It's a little more rounder. It comes back around a little bit more. And then the sweetness, like I say, it's almost like cake with a little bit of bitterness to kind of round it out and make it refreshing. Oftentimes with the wheat beers, although we're not really talking about wheat beers, we're talking about the yeast characteristic, you'll serve it with a lemon. I've talked to many people from Germany, and they can't seem to give me an answer one way or the other whether or not these are served with lemons in Germany or not. But anyway, that's a nice thing you can do. Real great, refreshing summertime beer. Also good and fortifying, nice proteins and all that good stuff. Anyway, yeast turns the sugar water into alcohol and carbon dioxide for you. Hefe means with yeast, basically. Hefeweizens. Don't get a crystal Weiss. Get a Hefeweisse. And, hope you had fun. I enjoyed drinking this beer with you. I'll see you at the end of the bar. Bye.